Good evening, everybody. Monday morning quarterback, episode 119. And we're happy to have you here tonight. Thanks for tuning in. We have a special guest, Dave Sharpley with Sharp Advantage Safety Products. And he's going to talk about a real important thing, which is how to mount your seat belts. Can everybody hear us okay? Let's see that the audio is working. Is it? There we go. Audio's working, I just couldn't see it. Okay, so Dave was helping me with some stuff with Hudson's quarter midget, and one of the things that is always a challenge on a quarter midget is getting the seat belts in the right location, since the kids don't sit perfectly centered in the car and where the seat belts are. And so he really helped us get our seatbelt positions a lot better on the quarter midget. And I thought, that's a good topic to go over. Not only how to properly get the seat mounted in the car if you're in a full-size race car, but how to mount the seat belts and things to look for, things to do and not to do. And so we figured we'd bring our safety expert in, Dave, who has spent a lot of time with racers at a very high level and doctors that have specialized in motorsports, and he's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. So we'll have Dave kind of go over the important things here on the seat and seatbelt side, and then we will jump back in to answer all your questions pertaining to anything racing related or safety. And so without further ado, here's Dave Sharpley.
Well, thanks Garrett, for having me. We're going to talk tonight just a few little basic things about seats, mounting your seat properly, and seat belts and seat belt angles. So the first thing we'll try to show is inside the seat there. We'll have a little look, and we can see on this one, our local friends were nice enough to let us have their car here for the evening. So we can see on this one, you see the whole seat is covered up by a proper large area washer with a proper length bolt through it. Preferably like a grade 8 bolt would be pretty normal, but the most important thing is to get a real nice area washer that covers the area of the bolt. So what you don't want is the bolt then wanting to pull through the seat, especially if it's the holes are egged out. You got to really be careful with that. So nice large area washer, proper bolts. Same thing here in the back. We've got the proper bolts, large area washer. One thing to be sure of when you are doing this is that if you do have an aluminum seat, or you have any kind of seat that you have, when you do have the holes drilled through, and if your holes are drilled through, and then you decide to mount it in another car and you drill another hole, when those holes get close together, that's very, very bad. So what we got to make sure is if the holes get close together, we stop what we're doing, we weld the holes closed, sand the seat properly, then you can make 2 holes in the bottom, 2 holes in the back, as it should be for a fairly standard mount. Always on the seat, underneath the seat and behind the seat, you be sure to use a proper spacer, proper large area spacer, just like on the top you use on the back. So we're getting a big bite on a big part of the seat before we just stick the bolt through and through the spud in the back. So that's more or less what we have for mounting the seat. We'll start to discuss a little bit about your seat belts. So seat belts, the first thing is the angles of the seat belts that I want to go over. So as the seat belt comes through the seat, you can see on this, the seat has a nice big hole through the back here, nice and big. So when the belt comes through the hole, it's not chafing against the seat or any part of the seat. The belt is coming straight through the hole and is touching nothing except the driver's shoulders when it comes through. That's really important on all your seat belts. They should come through the seats, no chafing, and go right over the driver. So another point, we'll come around if you can to this side. We'll show you this seat has a bolt-in seat belt with a nice mount the proper spud through the frame, which obviously when you're doing that, you either want to have your chassis man do it or a proper fabricator that can drill the frame through and put a proper spud in the frame and then weld it in there. You never want to drill through the frame and just bolt this. So I'll go over really quickly with the seat belts and how you wrap your seat belts in the car. So that's one thing that like there's probably 15 different ways to do it that are okay, but I'm going to show you the proper way. So the 3-bar clamp that's on here, we'll go around the tube, okay? Then we'll go through the 3-bar clamp, and then we'll get our length set like that, whatever your length is. Then we'll set that. We'll put the seatbelt back through it again, just like you would do your helmet. But the difference with the seatbelt is at the end of it, to terminate the seatbelt, we come straight back through the top to terminate the seatbelt, and that's it. And then when your lengths are all set, you're nice and tight there, you can cut that seatbelt with either a razor blade or a sharp scissors. I would say the general rule of thumb is 3 or 4 inches you leave hanging out as a tail. This is just a seatbelt that's brand new that we hadn't fit to any driver yet. So 3 or 4 inches after that, you cut your seatbelt, and then you can burn the edge of it like this with a little bit of a lighter or some sort, just so you don't get any fraying. Fraying is really, really bad. So that's the seatbelts. So one thing we'd like to talk about would be our seatbelt buddy. This is a product that we've designed and made at Sharp Advantage. The seatbelt buddy is this nice little piece that will help on only wraparound seatbelts. So the seatbelts are wrapped around the frame. On a normal seatbelt, when this piece isn't here, this seatbelt could move laterally up and down this rail. And no matter what you think, when the driver's sitting in there properly and that's tight and he's strapped in tight, in the event of a crash, this belt will move up and down this rail, which is really, really bad because that lets the driver move with the seatbelt. So the seatbelt buddy is designed, it will captivate the belt right here and not let the belt move. And the other nice thing about the seatbelt buddy is a lot of times once the driver gets out, these seatbelts will want to end up going over center and flipping down like this because the weight of this piece. Well, the seatbelt buddy has a little device on the back of it, this arm that goes over it, that will not allow that seatbelt to go any further than right there. So you'll never get in your car and that piece will never be turned over upside down. What could happen is that belt, this piece, without the seatbelt buddy, could get turned over upside down. You could get in the car, you could strap your seatbelts, and then once you strap your seatbelts, this thing would still be turned over center. You could strap in, be nice and tight, get pushed off, and once you get pushed off, the vibration could let this then pop back up over center, and then your seatbelts are loose. That's really, really bad.
So that really covers things that seem very simple but are often overlooked and that are very, very important as far as getting the seat mounted in the car very securely, proper washers, proper large diameter spacers if you have to space the seat between the chassis, the distance between the seat and the chassis, you need to have a large diameter washer there. A small diameter washer, you chance pulling it through the seat, okay? And then all the stuff Dave said about the seat belts, extremely important to get the angles right. We have some specifications that Dave has sent me from SFI. I'll put those in the comment section of the video so you guys can check that out, read up on the angles and all the stuff that Dave covered and have reference. If you go back to watch this video at a later date, in the comment section we'll post those things.
I think I'd like to go over just, if I could, one more
Sure.
thing about the submarine belt, or the crotch belt, which is this belt. So one of the things that a lot of people, when they're mounting their seat belts, they don't recognize the importance of the submarine belt, or otherwise known as the crotch belt. So this submarine belt is one of the most important seat belts in the car, and this is why. So when the seat belts are all mounted together, let's just say we don't have that, and we don't use the crotch belt, or we have the crotch belt really loose. It's maybe hooked up there, but it's super loose, and it's not going to be doing anything, because it's a pain for the driver to hook up. So what's going to happen is the driver's going to strap in, and if his seat belts are nice and tight around his pelvis, well, now as soon as he pulls these shoulder belts tight, what's going to happen is these seat belts are going to go up like this, because there's nothing to hold them down. The crotch belt effectively holds that seat belt cluster down on the driver's pelvis, which is very important, because in the event of a cage first impact or upside down contact to the ground, what happens is this seat belt, then you will come up out of the seat just a little bit if your crotch belt's not tight. If your crotch belt is nice and tight, let's just say this is him strapped in, as soon as he starts wanting to come up out of the car because he's crashing upside down, this crotch belt will not allow you to go up out of the race car at all. If you don't have this crotch belt tight, which is very important, as soon as you get a cage first impact, no matter how tight these shoulder belts are, it's going to let you just come rise up just out of the seat, just like this. And that is really important. Most important seatbelt in the race cars right there. We need to make sure we're educated about it.
Yeah, very important. We see guys from time to time that don't run the sub belt, and that's very important. A couple questions that are coming in. Stephen Perlmuter, sorry. He said Pace race cars in California have a new seatbelt mounting system. Have you seen it? And what's your thoughts on it?
I've seen a couple new things. I don't know exactly what the young man's talking about, but I've seen a couple new things, and only thing I would hesitate with something that I haven't seen or I haven't tested is most of the stuff that I try to do. I try to get some valid testing on it before I would sign off on it. But I'm by all means would I be definitely interested in looking at it if that young man would either email one of us, either Garrett or myself. My email's at sharpadvantage@yahoo.com. I'd be happy to have a look at it or answer any other questions about that unit. I'm just not familiar with it.
Yeah, I've personally never seen it, so I'm not exactly sure. Kevin Crum wants to know, what is the proper relationship in relation to the height of the driver's shoulders to where the shoulder belt should be mounted on the chassis if you have a choice? So where the guy's shoulders at, and then where the shoulder belt should hook on the chassis.
That's a really good question. Some of that information should be in the sheet that Garrett has either shown or will show.
Yep. Posted at
but
the end.
Great question. That's really important. So when the driver is sitting in the race car, if you could take a straight edge and put a straight edge directly over his shoulders, straight back to the back of the race car, the shoulder belts should either be straight over his shoulders and hooked to the bar behind the seat, or it should be, there's an angle there that's 0 degrees, which is straight over his shoulders, straight back, to 20 degrees of a downward slope down towards the tail. If your seat belts are going over the driver's shoulders, through the seat, and up in the air, really bad. If they're going over the driver's shoulders, down really far, really bad. So that angle is 0 to 20 degrees. And one thing I'd like to show real quick, the seat belts when they come through the seat right here, I see a lot of times guys running this 3-bar clamp where they wrap the seat belts around. They'll run it down to maybe to this bar or to this bar. And all this length extra is, all that is extra length for the belt to stretch. The belts will stretch per inch a certain amount. So every added inch of seat belt before it's terminated is a little bit more stretch when the driver's crashing. So my recommendation is terminate the seat belt behind the driver as soon as possible. On the back seat belts, on the lap belts, and on the crotch belt.
Yeah, so again, you would never want to mount that down here when you can mount it right here, right? The longer the belt is, the more stretch. Martin Edwards wants to know, how do you determine how high to mount the seat in the race car?
That question, Martin, is complicated because of depending on what kind of car you have. If you have a sprint car or a midget where the torque tube is running between the driver's legs and the rear end is underneath him, what regulates the height of the seat is you have to be sure that when that torque tube comes up in the event of a crash, again, that's what we're talking about, that rear end can come up so far. The seat should never be mounted lower than when the rear comes up at full compression. That torque tube should very, if anything, be able to just touch the seat and no more. That will regulate your seat height up and down, is the torque tube in a car where the drive line runs between the driver's legs. On a regular car, the location of the seat, if you have room underneath you and above you, is the limiting factor is always head clearance, and that's really the main thing that would stop you from mounting your seat any higher in a regular car where you have room underneath you. The sprint cars and midgets, the limiting factor is that torque tube. You cannot let that torque tube come up and make serious contact with that seat, or it will result in a serious, it could result in a serious injury.
Yeah, and I know like on the pavement stuff, you know, everything's so low to the ground. You always run into clearance issues there with the torque tube. The seat's almost on top of the torque tube, and again, you're trying to manage head height too, but you can always have your chassis manufacturer build you a taller cage car if need be, if you're a taller driver.
Limiting factor is either head clearance or torque tube. You've got to watch out for that. You know, the torque tube really being a big problem, you know, so that would be your limiting factor, would be the torque tube running out of room before it smashes into the seat, and the clearance to the roll cage, which is, you know, obviously important as well.
Yeah. Anybody else has any questions, feel free to fire away. More than happy to answer those for you, whether it's a tech question for me, a safety question for Dave. We are looking forward to going to Huntsville this weekend for the Turkey Gobbler. CSI is giving a $50 gift card to every heat race winner. So we were supposed to be in Vegas this week for Winter Nationals. Bummed out that's not happening. Really feel for the people at Good Times QMA that worked so hard to try to get that race to go. But we're thankful for Huntsville QMA to give us a place to race this weekend, and looking forward to going down there and seeing some customers. And after that, our travel is a little open. We're still trying to determine whether vendors are going to be allowed at the Shootout and Chili Bowl, which we certainly love to go to those events every year, and just kind of see what's going to happen with the pandemic and everything, and what races are going to happen and aren't going to happen. So if you're an online shopper, we have our cyber sale starting Thursday, and so that runs through Monday, and a lot of great deals on a bunch of new apparel, and then we have some other stuff that's going to be marked down. Closeout section stuff's going to be marked down. So not everything like the super sale, but some really great deals on stuff that can go under the Christmas tree, right? So gift certificates or gift cards, apparel, and stuff like that. So.
And while we're talking about that, Sharp Advantage is going to have some Black Friday deals as well. So stay tuned to our social media channels as well. We'll be offering some fairly good shopping for everybody's entertainment Friday night.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in for episode 119. Again, we're always looking for some feedback as far as new topics you guys would like to see. Kevin Crum gave me a great one today, doing a trailer tours on different styles of race cars. So quarter midgets, micros, midget sprint cars. So that's something we're going to work on here this winter, to do some trailer tours with some of the teams around here that use our products and have a good setup. So look for that coming, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next Monday. We hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for tuning in.